Welcome. You are listening to Caregiving Secrets with Deborah Greenhut. If you are a family caregiver or expect to be one, and you want to maintain your well-being while caring, then you are in the right place. We need to invent and reinvent family care, and together we're going to do it. My big idea is rational caregiving, and my motto is, let your brain lead your heart. Caregiving Secrets, because friends don't let friends be caregivers alone. Let's do this. Hello, it's great to have you here listening today. And my special guest is Dr. Michelle Montero, who is a clinical psychologist who has a lot of great experiences working with caregivers and all the subjects around it. So I'm going to give Michelle a moment to introduce herself and tell us a bit about how she came to do what she's doing. Michelle, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. So I'm Dr. Michelle Montero. I'm a clinical psychologist in Chicago, Illinois, and you're absolutely right. I work with a vast array of clients, and many of them are caregivers. And uh, something that people don't know a lot about me is that I actually started my psychology career getting a job when I was 15 as a caregiver. So I started my experience working at an assisted living facility, and I was a caregiver through like the end of high school, college, and grad school. And then prior to getting my doctorate and getting my license here in Chicago, I ran an assisted living facility for those with various forms of dementia. So I have about 15 years of experience in actual elder care and caregiving myself, which I think is really unique when then you're working with individuals who have gone through it. I've worked with many families who have really been trying to figure out what they're going to do. Their parent doesn't want to go into a facility, but they really need to, or, maybe they decide to pull them out of a facility and making all those really important life choices. So I've sat with many people and then I've worked with them in my clinical office as well. So very, very important work.
What do you think accounts for the resistance that people have to changing the idea of what they thought was going to happen? What goes into that mindset that makes us not do the right thing for ourselves, whether we're the caregiver or the patient?
I think that's a really, really good question. And it's complex and it's layered. And I think it starts with just being really human. And we're designed to be sort of self-focused. So when something is really emotional, right? Like our frontal lobes, other things kind of shut down the our reasoning and sort of like the periphery kind of goes away, and we're really focused on preserving ourselves. So I think in situations where whether it be ourselves that's doing the caregiving, or we're the one that is maybe needing the caregiving, we're really focused on what is going on for us. And it isn't always top of mind to think about what's going on for the other person. Um, I think for, let's say, the sandwich generation, or, adult children caring for their parents, oftentimes it's a reality that we don't want to confront. Oh no, our loved one is aging. And I think about my own parents, right? My dad is snow-capped. But in my mind, I see him with this very, very dark hair. My niece and nephew, who are 6 and 9, they're always like, he doesn't have dark hair. In my mind, I still see him as my dad, who was younger than I am now. So thinking of him aging hurts my heart and pulls on those emotions. Um, I think also in that position, we think about like the life that we still want to live, and maybe what we'll have to sacrifice. And it's not out of, I don't, oftentimes people, it's not out of, malice, or it's just sort of like, oh my gosh, like I, this wasn't my fantasy. I think for those that are aging, and being a caregiver and sitting with so many families, and then working in the clinical aspect of things is, I think the loss of identity, ageism is a real thing. And people are off, it's a very invisible population. I was speaking with somebody earlier today who said, I don't know when it happened, but people just stopped seeing me. Um, and, you know, that is heartbreaking and it will happen to all of us. So I think there's a dignity piece. Oftentimes the aging have already lost a lot of their loved ones and their friends, so they're very isolated. Then going into maybe a community, it's, well, who am I going to know? I don't trust these people. This is scary. And suddenly your choices, you don't feel like you have agency anymore. And I think those things combined make it very murky and very emotional.
That's so important. I think in 73 now, as I am, I'm starting to feel that invisibility
Mm-hmm.
creeping in, and I'm thinking, well, where is that coming from? I'm the same as I'm
Mm-hmm.
here, and it just really, it's so insidious, and it just creeps up on you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're also a caregiver at that point, it's very hard to get your hand up in the air and say, wait, I need an explanation. I'm sitting,
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go home with this person and figure this out. And I can't do that without some more help from you. So I'm not just the
Mm-hmm.
car driver here, and
Right.
a lot of times caregivers are kind of sidelined, which becomes a problem for people. But I remember that feeling of watching my dad become invisible. It was, like watching a movie where he had always been the life of the party, especially in the
Mm-hmm.
immediate family, which was very large. He was the joke teller and the
Mm-hmm.
center of all of our celebrations in the family, the patriarch.
Yeah.
And one day, after my mother passed away, he'd become a lot meeker, but he was still telling his jokes and so on. And I noticed that people weren't listening to him anymore. And I thought,
Mhm.
how did that happen?
You used a really great word earlier. It's like it can be very insidious until it isn't. And then it's kind of like, where did we get, how did we get here? And I think there's a lot of isolation on both sides of the continuum that really isn't addressed. Um, Isolation literally from maybe hearing is going. And so you're the life of the party and everybody was looking at you and suddenly you can't hear them. Or maybe you hear them, um, what you hear may not be exactly what they're saying. Maybe words are getting, we have a guest here, a feline. Um, Certain words are jumbled, and so what you think somebody is saying isn't actually what they're saying. Then suddenly the people that were listening to you aren't taking you as serious anymore, and they kind of look at you like, oh, he doesn't even know what he's talking about. And it just sort of breaks down. And, I have chills thinking about it, thinking about your dad, thinking about why don't people notice me? Because it's everyone wants to belong. That never goes away. And so I think that breakdown can be really, really harmful until people just kind of withdraw.
Yeah, and I think that the double invisibility, the caregiver who might be an only
Hmm.
child, and the parent are both, just not noticed by the people who are supposed to be professionally taking care of them.
Yes.
An odd kind of not functioning very well relationship. I don't
Right.
know if it's dysfunctional
Ab-
because it happens all the time. Maybe it's not, except it would be so much better if people could take the time. And I know we have all those pressures of the paperwork that has to get done and the other things,
mhm.
the office and the profession that have to be attended to. But
Yeah.
um, ignoring people at that stage where so much is confusing has become pretty frustrating to me.
Yes. And like information is limited and it's hard to find. I've worked with several individuals whose parents had different forms of dementia and they're just so overwhelmed. Like, I don't even know where to go for this information. Or one person is sending them to another person, or I know Kimberly and other people today have talked a lot about like links not working. So you're just overwhelmed with, okay, I don't know who to go to. And then I get something and a link isn't working. And I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so tired. I don't even know where to look. But when I look, it's not there. There's all these barriers to entry, which I think can really shut a person down as well. And going back to your point of just not having time, one of the things that I just find is one of them is not going to change what has happened, but I think goes a really long way is just slowing down and connecting with people. So we're all so rushed, but when somebody slows down, and even if you don't know the right resource to send somebody to slow down and connect with them, sorry, this is happening with your family, Deborah. Like, let me just take a second to hear what's happening for you. And that people feel seen, right? Or, mentioning somebody's name. I can recall working in many of the different facilities that I've worked and just sitting and being like, there's Mary, my favorite resident, right? And saying her name and looking up and just you could see the transformation in her, just feeling somebody knows who I am. They said my name and they're connecting with me. It's just a small thing that you can do, but it goes a long way. And at the end of the day, all of us want to feel connected.
Yeah, I think what people don't realize so much, and they start to feel it at some point in the caregiving, is that the relationship really comes first. Um,
Hmm.
and I think some of the things people worry about are, I don't know how to operate medical technology. I don't know
Hmm.
how to change an IV, and they get
Yeah.
occupied with those things, which could be taught or perhaps done by somebody else, if
Hmm.
you have the resources, which is a whole other problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to try to do everything yourself is often to sacrifice that relationship, the connection that is probably in the end much more important. I mean, it
Hmm.
my my mother passed away, and I moved in with my dad right away because I knew he wasn't going to be able to. He was much older than she was, and he couldn't handle anything. But at first, I was so preoccupied because we had the estate to manage and we had all of his medical
Hmm.
situation, which was so complicated and
Hmm.
involved bipolar depression and heart disease, and it was just crazy. I don't know how my mother put the effort in at the end. She was so sick with emphysema, so I don't know how they were a doctor and a nurse and they cared for each other. Nobody else.
Hmm.
But so there I am with absolutely no medical skills. So I move in and I was like slashing and burning and knocking things over because I had no
Hmm.
idea what was important. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, by the time I realized I wasn't going to have very much time with him, he was already, of course, in the hospital, having had the last heart attack, and
Hmm.
I was going to be in hospice there, and they didn't want to tell him. I guess his colleagues felt they knew best, but he wasn't. I think he was aware because he was a pretty smart doctor, and he didn't
Hmm.
have dementia. But till the end, I think they wanted him to feel there was still hope. They just didn't want to take
Hmm.
from him. So that was their
Yeah.
but I only realized pretty well into that process, I'm not going to get the time that I was scrambling to get
Yeah.
things. So
Yeah.
I hope that, in the future, if I ever have to do the caregiving thing for someone else again, I've done it a few times, but
Hmm.
relationship has to come first. And
Hmm.
all the other things are just much less important, all the tasks of it. So
Yeah. And that it's so true. And it's also when you're in it, that's so hard to remember. It's so hard to remember. And, just hearing your own story, right, where you're like, oh my gosh, they were a nurse and a doctor and they took care of each other. And here I came in. And it's like, these are my parents. What? I don't know how they've been maintaining this, but they have. And now I have to catch up, right? And not only am I catching up, but I'm also losing a parent. And you're an adult, but they're still your parents. That's never gonna not hurt. And so that's all very overwhelming. And I think for those of us that are maybe like on the outside, that are watching somebody that was in your position or, another one that is doing the caregiving, to kind of remind one another that it's okay to take a minute, right? Like this is confusing. This is really confusing. It's actually kind of meant to be confusing. It's not designed to be easy. Um, and that's unfortunate. And take the time. Like it's okay to just sit and read to your dad. Or, I'm thinking of a woman who loved show tunes. And so we would just sit with her and like listen to show tunes. And she would just lay there. She was nonverbal and she would just lay there and you could just see like she had had a stroke. And so the one side of her face was working, the other was not. It was paralyzed. And you could just see like a gentle smile. And you could tell she was happy and content, right? It's like those small things. that connection of humanity that matter. And when we're the ones that are kind of carrying the burden, we sometimes need others that are not in it to remind us it's okay to slow down. Let me take this for a second, and you just put things show to your loved one.
Now, not every caregiving situation ends in death, but I think
Hmm.
for many people, grieving already kicks in before that,
Way before.
especially in elder care situations.
Hmm.
What advice do you have for caregivers who start feeling that on top of all the other load that they are carrying?
Yeah, that's a question that I get asked quite a bit. And the idea, if any of my clients ever were listening to this, they'd laugh because we talk about the idea of like pre-grieving. And they're always like, I'm pre-grieving. And my response is like, you are, and you can't. Like you can't, I mean, you are, you can start that grief process early. That absolutely is a thing that is not going to take away from the grief you feel later either, right? That's what, and that's a good point. Not every caregiving ends in a death. There's lots of other ways of caregiving as well. And there is grief involved. And so I feel like always finding a way to slow down. If you can't remind yourself, have others to remind you to slow down. Put little reminders in your phone to slow down and to validate yourself. Our minds are the only thing that we hear constantly all day that's not interrupted. The only way it's interrupted is if we tell someone, right? Like, this is what I'm thinking in here. So it's an echo chamber. And if we don't interrupt that voice and validate, self-validate, it makes hearing the external validation just that much harder to hear as well. Or we're only relying on that. So to say, yeah, I am grieving, and grief, I was told by somebody a long time ago that grief, the level of grief that you experience is often the amount of like complicated love that you have as well for this person. And it's a real honor and testament to the relationship, whether it was like a really easy relationship or it was a complicated relationship. If it's complicated, your grief is likely to be complicated. If it was a great relationship, you're going to feel great grief, right? And like all of those things. And it's kind of a testament to this happened and this is real and I'm hurting or I'm angry or this is uncomfortable. And we as humans are designed to feel. So let yourself feel it.
Yeah, I was talking with someone the other day about that very thing, and she said that while she regretted that her father had passed away, she now had on her phone from spending those weeks with him, video of him telling a joke or a video of him
Hmm.
thinking about the beautiful yard that he had and all of those memories, which it's so nice that we can have that now. I have very few
Hmm.
videos of my dad because of the time, you know,
Yeah.
30 years ago at this point, and we just did, the phone was not the main part, the other part of my hand
Hmm.
at that point.
You
So
didn't
I
have a camera roll just ready to go.
didn't have that ready. No. So, and I don't know if he would have wanted me to photograph him. Now everybody's used to it, but I don't think we would.
Yeah.
So, so I only have a few, but I hear his voice in my head every day. It's never going,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
that's both a comfort and sometimes it's a little uh, jarring to
Yeah. Like a trigger in a way,
but it
jarring.
makes it tells me I still have a dad and I didn't completely
Hmm.
over as his mother or something or his parent, which I think is one of the tough parts of caring for your parents, that you're changing
Hmm.
places and it's unavoidable, but it doesn't feel right to anybody involved. So
Yeah.
so those boundaries get
That
challenged.
role reversal. Hmm.
Yeah, so that's another whole area. And I can see that you and I have a lot to talk about, so maybe we can continue this another time,
Yeah.
close to the
I
end.
would love that.
So I do want to make sure that you have a chance to tell people how to connect with you because you are providing a really wonderful service that is so giving and so helpful. So I hope people will find you. So how will we?
Yeah, well, thank you. I have a website. It's a little bit long, but it's alchemyperformanceconsulting.com. And on there, there's a contact page. And so you can reach out through there or my LinkedIn.
Those are great, and we'll definitely put them in the show notes. So, Dr. Michelle Montero, thank you so much for being my guest today. I learned a lot from listening to you, and I hope to listen to you some more. So, have a great
Thank you so much. You too.
My pleasure. Thank you for joining me today on the Share Giving Secret. You can dive deeper by picking up a copy of my pamphlet, Non-Negotiables for Caregivers. Go to my website, deborahgreenhut.com, and click on the link for Non-Negotiables for Caregivers. Until next time, keep sharing, keep caring, and remember, you're not alone on this journey.